What do you do when you've got a problem that's just so big? You have no idea how to get started on figuring it out or even trusting God for whether or not He's powerful enough to help you solve it. Well, you go to Isaiah 40. Isaiah 40 is a good starting place for understanding how much bigger God is than any of the concerns that we here on earth have. It's a matter of trusting Him.
Mark, it's good to see you again, and I want to welcome you, and I want to welcome all those who are joining us today as we talk about some of the big things that God's doing.
Hi, everybody.
I've been thinking about two things lately. I have a friend of mine who is going through a cancer challenge, and he's about to go to the hospital in another couple of weeks, and he's going to go through some sort of a laser treatment. And what they're going to do is they're going to try to take this cancerous tumor and shrink it down so it can just be easily removed. That's pretty stunning and amazing medical treatment. And it reminds me that in many ways that medical laser equipment, there's a parallel to that in the Bible. And I think it's Isaiah chapter 40, which is really God's laser to try to shrink down what we considered big, insurmountable obstacles, big, deadly things, and shrink them down so that they are in their proper perspective. The other thing that it does in Isaiah 40 is that it shrinks things down by showing us how amazingly big God really is, that we forget about. And it just seems to me that in my life, it seems like every 6 months or 8 months, somebody mentions Isaiah 40 and drives me back there. And all of a sudden, I'm reminded, all these big things I'm dealing with all the time, okay, are really small things when you consider how big God is. And it's healthy for me to think about how big God is.
Yeah. Well, your mind may be better than mine, but I don't think anybody could really comprehend exactly. Obviously, there are things that I can't comprehend. There's a bigness to things. I have a hard time envisioning what a million is. But I looked this up, John. The difference between a million and a billion. So, do you know, or do you have a guess as to how many days a million seconds is? Do you know the answer to that question?
No. How many days does it take to come up with a million or a billion?
A million seconds.
A million seconds.
You have a guess?
No, I guess maybe 6 months. I don't know.
I don't think there's any silly answer to that question, because we're talking about numbers. The whole point of this exercise is to say that these numbers are so unintelligible and hard to understand. A million seconds is about 11 and a half days. A billion seconds is about 31 and a half years.
Wow.
That's the difference between a million and a billion. And so when we start talking here in a minute about the universe and billions of light years and this and that, we're starting off with this understanding that we can't really comprehend these things. We're too finite. We're too small. Yeah. And yet the Bible talks about all that like it's nothing for God.
Yeah. And you didn't mention trillion. So
well, if you're looking at the fact that you've got a million is one set, a billion is kind of 1,000 times of that, and a trillion is 3 times that, and quadrillion and quintillion 4 times, 5 times. Then you're talking about trillion being 31,000 years. Mm-hmm. That's how many seconds, how long a trillion seconds is.
Wow. Well, listen, I'll tell you, the reason we want to talk about this is because I think God wants us to live more boldly and more bravely. And that means we have to have a bigger faith. Mm-hmm. And to have a bigger faith, we have to have a clearer understanding of how big our God really is. And that's what leads me back to Isaiah 40 and some of these amazing analogies that you're hinting at with the numbers that God himself uses as a way of helping us envision that God is so much bigger than we naturally think. So let me read this off to you. This is Isaiah chapter 40, verse 12. And he says here, "Who has measured the waters in the hollows of his hand, and marked off the heavens with a span, and enclosed the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance?" So he's just giving us these enormous things to think about, okay?
Right.
To help
right.
us to see that these big, big, big things are nothing to God because he's so much infinitely bigger. And the point of that is to help us see that our lives, when they become the focus of such a large God, ought to give us a sense of security and a sense of boldness and a sense of confidence in him and our walk with him. That's how I connect all the dots. So let's take them one by one, okay?
Okay.
Let's talk about water. All the waters of the earth.
Yep.
What do you got about that?
So I did a little research on that, and
Okay.
my understanding is that about 71% of the Earth's surface is covered with water. Okay, so there right off the bat makes Earth unusual and different from all the other planets is that the vast, vast majority of the surface of the Earth is covered with water, 71%. And of all of that, 96, 97% of all that water is salt water, saline water.
Wow.
So think about all the tremendous rushing rivers and lakes and ponds and streams that you know of fresh water throughout the world, and you just kind of envision all that and all the water dumping over Victoria Falls and dumping over Niagara Falls. You take all that fresh water, and it's about 3% of the water that's in the world.
Okay.
So now here's where we get to quintillion. We talked about millions, billions, trillions, quadrillions, quintillions. There are about 350 quintillion gallons of water in the world. Now, a quintillion is one with 18 zeros behind it.
Okay. All right. You got a picture of that for us? 18 zeros. So one with 18 zeros, gallons, and the picture that is given to us in Isaiah 40 is that he holds that in this little space.
Right here. That's it. All that fits in the measure of his hand, in the hollow of his hand. And again, this is, this is language, metaphorical language or figurative language that just helps us understand that God has no limits. There is nothing that can swallow up his enormity of presence.
I think if I took a thimble and filled it with water, I would have trouble holding it in the cup of my hand, just the thimble full.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he goes on about the water. He talks about measuring space.
He uses the word a span.
Yeah. Marked off the heavens. Who has marked off the heavens with a span? Okay, so I looked up span, Mark. And I know that you'll be happy to learn this little scientific fact, okay?
I need to know.
That's a span. From the tip of your thumb to the tip of your little pinky in typical ancient measuring was considered a span. So you would measure how many spans high is that horse, okay? Something like that.
Okay.
Or it's used more generally to mean the distance between. Okay, the span of the bridge simply means the distance between the beginning and the end of it. So, this I'm going to show you some pictures of the heavens. This first picture here is a picture of our Earth, made, I believe, from the moon when our astronauts were there. But it's one of those. I mean, as a young man, I was just stunned by this beautiful picture
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
the
it's
world had never seen. It's like a little blue marble floating
Yeah.
in space with all its beauty.
That's right.
It looks so amazing. But then when you look at this next picture, you see the Earth and see how tiny it is compared to all the other planets within our.
Gracious.
What's that?
I mean, I'm
Yeah,
just looking at the difference between the size of Earth and Jupiter.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just almost unfathomable.
Exactly. And this is just our little solar system of planets here compared to the sun. And then if you go out a little bit further, so in other words, how many of these are there between us and the sun or us
Right.
and going out to
And the
Venus
end
and
of
Pluto?
the
Yeah.
the
Okay,
solar
this next
system.
one is just our Milky Way. So somewhere in this spiral of millions and millions of stars and planets, we have one little spot where our sun is located and our own particular solar system is located within this galaxy, this one galaxy.
It's unbelievable.
And then this last picture represents the millions of galaxies that there are. Okay, so our beautiful spiral is could be pictured in this mix. So
Yeah, lost somewhere
when you,
in there is just a little pinprick of light.
that's right, and the people from the NASA wrote about this picture. They said that thousands of galaxies have appeared in the Webb camera. Okay,
Yep, telescope.
and
Camera.
this is a slice of the universe that is approximately the size of a grain of sand held at arm's length, standing on the ground. That means if you take a grain of rice and you hold it up to the sky and you take a picture of the space behind that grain of rice, that's what we're looking
All
at.
these are behind that. Yeah,
Just all this is
in that
behind
little
that
tiny
one
little
grain.
space.
And you've got
Yeah.
all the other space.
So if I read you right, John, what you're saying is our understanding of the heavens, which is limited, obviously. And by the way, scientists they would say that the universe, the heavens are still expanding.
Yes.
And
yes.
God has measured all that off as a span of his hand. That's a span to God.
Exactly. So it's again a way of helping us see God as bigger than than our daily problems tend to hide. And our problems always are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to deal with that? And this is just the God's way of shrinking things back down to the right size, and then expanding our understanding of who God is as the God who loves us and cares for us so intimately. There's another metaphor that's mentioned. Maybe you did some work on this. Is
yeah.
on the
So
mountains.
we've got here in verse 12. He's measured the water in the hollows of his hand, and he's marked off the heavens with the span. The other point of reference here is weighing the mountains in scales, or so often in Hebrew poetic language, you say something twice in different ways to reiterate what you're talking about. The weight of the mountains in a scale, or all of the hills, if you will, on the earth in a balance, is basically saying the same thing twice.
Exactly. So I pulled up a couple of pictures just to help people watching us get a sense of the weight that you'd have to weigh. Okay, so here's a picture of Mount Fuji. I actually flew out of Japan once and I saw Mount Fuji, and it is a thing to behold, but you can see how enormous that thing is. And then the second one is Mount Kilimanjaro, a very famous mountain in Africa, and I think it's in Tanzania. And with the animals, they're giving you some perspective. And then the third one is the peak of Mount Everest and all this hard rock and snow, and it's just, I mean, just what is it about these mountains? I mean, they got to be kind of heavy.
I would think they're pretty heavy. What do they say that Everest is 29,000 feet high, and that's above sea level. That's very, very difficult to.
So if you took all of
fathom.
those and you kind of stick them in a little scale,
In a scale.
I'm going to buy a pound of walnuts. So I can put them in a little scale there. Okay.
Yeah. How much does a mountain weigh? Did you find out how much a mountain weighs?
No,
What does a mountain weigh?
I didn't find that out. I don't think.
I think
but
I looked up what's an estimate of Mount Everest. If you were to take a guess as to what something of that mass, if you figure up the mass and the height and your average weight and everything, they say it would weigh, Mount Everest itself would weigh about 357 trillion pounds. That's
yeah.
I mean, obviously.
And a half. Yeah.
Yeah, and a half.
Yeah.
And a little bit.
Yeah. So all of these things
But he
God
can take
can measure
God,
in a scale.
He can take all of that and all of the other mountains and hills and ripples in the Earth's crust and just put it on a scale and just kind of weigh it out and see how much it weighs.
Yeah. And there's one other physical analogy here, verse 26, that I think is fun to notice here. He says, "Lift up your eyes on high and see." This is God saying to us, look, you want to know me and walk with me, make sure you take time to go outside and gaze at the universe. It is for your good. It will help you to walk and to trust in me. Look up, lift your eyes. Who created these? He who brings out their host by number, calling them all by name, meaning the starry hosts. I did find a fun fact about that, okay? I'm going to one up your 17 zeros.
Okay.
Okay. So there are an estimated 1 septillion stars, which is a 1 with 24 zeros following it. And that is, of course, some mathematicians sitting down and just kind of estimating things. But they estimate 1 billion stars for every galaxy. And of course, there are about 2 trillion galaxies that we know of. Okay, is their best estimate. So again, these are numbers that are basically designed to fry out your brain.
Yeah, that's it.
And enlarge your heart.
Yeah. And the more you know about science, the more they fry your brain. In other words, when Abraham was told to go outside and look up at the stars and see if he could count them, and God promised your descendants are going to be as numerous as these stars, your descendants are going to be as numerous as the sand on the seashore. Even then, he didn't have as much understanding as we do. So the more you know, the more unbelievable this is.
Yeah, which is designed to embolden us to trust in the great and big God of our lives. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about bold and brave living in light of who God is from Isaiah 40.
How big God is. Yeah.
So let's take a break and we come back and let's talk about, we'll try to land this plane in some of the practical things of life.
Okay.
The U.S. accounts for only 3% of the abortions that happen in our world each year, leaving 97% of the crisis before us as a world missions challenge. Would you join us in serving where the need is greatest? PassionLife, rescuing the most vulnerable where abortion is most concentrated.
We've received a really overwhelming and wonderful response to this tiny baby fetal model that we've developed here in PassionLife. This fetal model is a medically accurate representation from the 9th week after conception. If you go to our website, we've got a way for you to not only send those tiny babies around the world, but find out a way that you can have some of those tiny babies come to you for your own use as well. Well, John, we're talking about the vastness of God, if you will, and how God uses this language of the Bible to help us understand that He is above it all. He's bigger than it all. And if He's big, He can be trusted. Kind of reminds me of an old joke, John. You ready for an old dad jokes?
Yeah, sure.
Man's talking with God and man says to God, So God, how what's a day like for you? And God says, a day is like 1,000 years to me. And man says, well, what's a penny like to you? Or what's $1,000 like to you? And he says, well, it's like a penny to me. And the man says to God, well, can you give me a penny? And God says, yeah, I can. Just wait a second. Anyway, what we're talking about here is God can use this language because he's so far outside of it all. He's big. It's almost unfathomable. It's almost untouchable. It's almost unthinkable. And yet we know that God is intimate and personal, and his eye is on the sparrow, and he knows how many hairs are on our heads.
Yeah.
And he's he knows us and our problems and better than we know ourselves.
That's true. In fact, what you're doing is the Bible uses language in both extremes.
That's
the
right.
extreme vastness and the extreme intimacy or sensitivity or caring that he even in Isaiah 40 he mentions this in verse 11. Let me read it to you. He will tend his flock like a shepherd. This is the same God who measures the waters in the hollow of his hand, and it can measure out the universe with a span. He says, he will tend his flock like a shepherd. He will carry the lambs in his arms. He will carry them in his bosom and gently lead those that are with young, meaning those who are in a feeble condition or pregnant, let's say. All of this is just, again, language of intimacy and caring. And it makes a powerful combination that this is the God who you are believing in when you have an electric bill that you don't know if he can pay off. Okay. Does God care about your electric bill? Can he really look at my needs? Yes, the God, he can take care of it. He can build the universe. He can make sure your electric bill gets paid. And he can do both at the same time.
Exactly right. Exactly right. The whole idea of, I'm not going to bother God with this little request that I have. I mean, that's the picture of Scripture, is that God can handle being bothered with all of our problems. He can handle our bringing everything we have to him. It really gives us permission to trust God, even down to the finest details with our life. It helps us to understand that God is so powerful and so big and yet so intimate and so caring that there is nothing that we can do to overwhelm him if we are willing to place our trust and our faith in him, even for the small stuff.
Yeah, these verses also give us permission to say, I don't know, or I have to wait. I'll have to wait on the Lord to figure this out.
Exactly. It gives us a posture of knowing that God can be trusted, and we don't have to have all the answers because we know that he does.
And he doesn't consult us on what he thinks he should do. He's his own consulting firm within himself.
Well, that's exactly what it says actually in Isaiah 40, which we've been reading. When you come to verse 14, it says, whom did he consult? And who made him understand? Who taught him the path of justice and taught him knowledge and showed him the way of understanding? The answer to that question is kind of, it's a rhetorical question to saying God needed no counselors. He's not looking to anybody or any of us especially to give him permission or give him consult.
Yeah. And I go back to what you said earlier about Abraham and go out and look at the stars. This was part of his preparation to doing something bold, doing something big. So not only do we have this sense of comfort and being able to say, I don't know, and giving ourselves permission to recognize that sometimes the world's a lot bigger than we can understand it. But the same vision is designed to help us do bold and brave things.
That's exactly right. And that's what we're trying to do here with Passion Life. That's the mission of Passion Life, is to do something that's insurmountable, to go to the places of the world where abortion and infanticide and gendercide are such a tremendous problem, like the universe almost, it seems like to us, that it's almost untackleable. And yet God has given us a boldness to go into the very hottest, hardest places and trust him that we're going to be able to make a dent in this thing.
Yeah. Sometimes I use the word BHAG. It means big, hairy, audacious goals, meaning things that are certainly impossible to accomplish unless the Lord is in it. And then the point is that when God calls us to go and do hard things, to believe him, it's because he's going to be there in it, like when he sent Abraham out or all the other giants of the faith. It was by faith that they did this. It was by faith that they did that. It's by faith that they conquered this and suffered being sawn in two or shut the mouths of lions. You know, this bold and brave living, I think, is just something that I want to live that way, even at 70 years old. And I want this generation, the next generation, to believe God for big things.
Well, I think about what we have been watching God do in PassionLife for the last couple of years. Cuba, which was the country of 10 million people or more that had the highest abortion rate in the world, we have watched as the Cuban Christians have spread the message of the gospel of life from church to church across the entire island, and actually changed the measurable demographics of the island as far as bringing abortion rate from number 1 in the world down to number 4 in the world. And then what the replacement for that, now that Cuba has been dethroned, is that India is number 1 in the world. And that seems like eating an elephant. That seems like an unattainable goal, is to try to see India changed when it comes to abortion.
Yeah, you said there were like 10 million people in Cuba. And there's something like, what?
1.8
billion.
1.7, 1.8 billion people, in India.
Impossible.
And then they're separated by cultures and languages and geography. And it's just the idea of trying to tackle India is almost insurmountable. That's where we go to Isaiah 40 to understand that God is the God of the insurmountable.
Well, then I really want to encourage you and me to tackle it together, and all watching. Stop by PassionLife.org. Do something that feels difficult and impossible, and let's believe that God can accomplish big things through us. We need monthly partners. We need people to help us get to India. We want to get fetal models over to India. We want to train pastors in churches from the north down to the south. And it all seems overwhelming to me, Mark, until I go back to Isaiah 40.
Which puts in perspective, he is the one who holds all of that in the hollow of his hand. Let's look to him to provide.
Amen. Thank you.